Hello everyone! In our next lesson, we are going to learn about automation and workflow. So for example, wouldn't it be nice if our website and web browser automatically refreshed anytime we saved a change to a PHP file? Well, in order to set up automation like that, we need to use something called the command line. So before we move on in this section, I first want to answer two big questions. What is a command line and where can you find it on your computer? A command line is just a place where you can type and run commands. So back in the 1980s, this is how people used computers. But we didn't just step in a time machine. The command line is still relevant today. It's a central part of being a modern professional web developer. Now don't worry. I realize that the command line can be absolutely terrifying. However, the good news is that in order to set up automation that can really speed up our WordPress workflow, we really only need to know maybe 2 or 3 commands. Now, before we learn those 2 or 3 commands, I first want to show you where you can find the command line on your computer. I will cover both Mac and Windows. So first, if you're using a Mac, there's already an application on your computer named Terminal, and that's what I want you to use. One way to find it is to hold down the Command key and simultaneously press the spacebar key, and then you can just type in and search for Terminal, and when you find it, press Enter. Or the other way to find the Terminal app is just to dig into your Applications folder, and then within Applications, look for a subfolder named Utilities. Inside Utilities, you will see Terminal. Go ahead and open it up, and that is your command line on Mac. If you use Windows, I want you to do something slightly different. Windows does come bundled with its own command line, but it's not always perfectly suited for web development. So instead, if you're on Windows, I want you to use something named Git Bash. You can download Git Bash for free by visiting the official Git website, git-scm.com. And if you go ahead and download the installer for Windows, it comes bundled with an amazing program named Git Bash. Personally, I use both Mac and Windows computers, and whenever I develop a website on Windows, I always use Git Bash as my command line. So once you download and install this, then look within your All Programs area under Git, and you should have a new program named Git Bash. And that's what I want you to use for your command line on Windows. Okay, so now at this point, everyone has access to a command line. On Mac, that's Terminal. On Windows, it's Git Bash. And now the first command that I want to show you is how to change which folder or directory your command line is pointing towards. Because most of the time when we type and run a command, it's going to do something for that particular folder or directory. And so it's really important to tell your command line what folder it should be looking at. So right now, let's type in cd, which stands for change directory. So after cd, then include a space, and then we just include a path to whichever folder we want to navigate to. But let me show you a trick. Instead of actually typing in a path, you can just drag and drop a folder on top of our command line window. So for example, if you have a folder on your desktop, you can literally just drag and drop that folder on top of your command line window. So that way you don't need to manually type in a path to it. Okay, then if you press Enter or Return on your keyboard, your command line is now pointing towards that folder. So now if you run any commands or actions, that's the folder that will be acted on. Let me give you another example. So if you used Local by Flywheel to install WordPress locally, here's what I will want you to do in our next lesson. Within Local by Flywheel, open up your project folder. So remember, you can always right-click on the project and then choose Show Folder or Reveal in Finder. Then you can dig into that folder. Then you could dig into App. And remember, Public is where all of your WordPress files live. So if you wanted to point your command line to look within this folder, you could just go back one folder and then in your command line say cd space and then just drag that public folder onto the command line. That automatically spells out the path for you and then just press enter. Now we haven't actually done anything with our command line yet. We're just learning how to move to a desired folder. Now if you're using WAMP or MAMP or XAMPP or something similar, you can do the exact same thing. Just navigate to the folder that contains your WordPress files, say cd space, and then drag that folder onto your command line. And if at any point you're not sure where your command line is currently pointing, let me backspace here, you can always just run a command named pwd, which stands for print working directory. So pwd, and then if you press enter, that will let you know where your command line is currently pointing. That's really all you need to know at this point. Now that you know how to open up your command line and point it towards a folder, you are ready to move on to the next lesson and begin setting up automation. I will point out that this automation and workflow section of the course is not absolutely necessary. So if you're only interested in strictly WordPress and PHP, technically you can skip this section. But I encourage you to work through this section because in the long run, this automated workflow can save us a lot of time. And it can also help us keep our code a bit more organized. Just a bit of a spoiler, in the next lesson, I'm going to have you move 4 key new files into your main WordPress folder. Or depending on your preference, you can move these 4 new files to live maybe 1 or 2 directories up from your WordPress folder. But either way, these 4 new files are what's going to enable our automated workflow. Let's keep things rolling, and I will see you then.